welcome to EDS HSD Awareness Month, Week 2. I'm Jeannie DeBon. Welcome to today's live class. Give me a little wave. Who's here? Who have we got in the class today? And were you here last week for week 1? Or is this your first ever live class? So let me know before we get started. But as always, thank you for joining me for this hypermobility class. I've got a chair for modifications. You don't need any other equipment. You don't even need a chair if you don't need modifications. It's 5 o'clock UK time, so we're going to get started. We're talking posterior muscles today. So this class is called Energise. And that can be a really scary word when you live with a chronic illness, because it's like, oh, hello, everyone's coming in now. Lovely the Palm Desert, California. That's where my husband proposed to me. So it's a very special place in my heart. Christy from Spain, second live class. Welcome, Christy. Always nice to see who's here. Thank you so much. So yeah, energize, I think, can be quite a scary word when you live with chronic illness, because it's like, well, I'm tired, I'm in pain. What does energize even mean? I haven't got energy to make a cup of tea or wash my hair. So, you know, how am I going to do a class? So don't worry about that. Hi from Birmingham, lovely. Lovely to see you, Alison. It's going to be gentle in a way. You know, we're going to Energize to me is more about opening up the body, connecting with the body, getting some blood flow, getting some breath. It's not about doing star jumps and planks. So please don't switch off, stick with it. Hopefully you're going to find some things you like. We are going to have a little bit of education. So if you've seen my other live classes, I normally talk about something like feet or shoulders or fascia. So we're going to do a little bit of education, which ties in with the posterior muscles, which I've been going on about for the past few weeks on social media. So when I post about this, I'm not saying, hi Laura, hi Heather. I'm not saying that we should only be using our posterior muscles. Okay, so what I'm saying is that we need a balance between the front of the body and the back of the body. So you've got muscles here, you've got muscles here. And for healthy movement, these muscles rub along together quite happily. And there's balance, like with everything. Oh, welcome to your first class. Thank you for joining us. So we want balance. Now, what I found over my years, and I've been sort of teaching hypermobility clients for 14, 15 years now, and obviously I have it myself, so I'm coming from a personal experience. The posterior chain, and I'm talking back of head, back of the upper back, lumbar spine, glutes, hamstrings, calves, soles of feet, that's posterior. In my experience, those are quite, I don't even want to say weak, but we're not quite as aware of them. We find it more difficult to engage with them. So that's what I found. And I found that we're quite dominant in our front body. So I don't know about you, but how many people have got tight TMJ, tight pecs, tight diaphragm, excuse me, tight abdominal muscles, tight quads, tight shins. So you might be getting the idea. How many people grip their toes when they're standing? So that's a real giveaway that you're over-activating your front chain and you're not making the most out of your posterior chain. And that's what we're going to address today, and give you some ideas and some tips, and even become more aware of, oh yeah, I am doing that thing. I am gripping with my front body. Because if the front body's overactive, the back body's not getting a chance to do its job. So we want to address that balance. And I found over the years that this is really, really beneficial for hypermobility. Yes, exactly. Posterior chain goes wrong, messes up with balance so much. Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the hypermobile posture, so many of us lean into our front bodies, don't we? We kind of hang into this front chain. And then again, the back body, the glutes, are not doing anything at all. And if your glutes aren't firing and they aren't supporting the pelvis, you know, we're going to have hip problems, lumbar pain. You're not going to have enough power when you're walking. You know, I'm not just blaming the glutes. We want that, you know, I talk about whole body organization. It's not just one muscle that's responsible for all the aches and pains in the body. It's whole body alignment and whole body organization, which comes into balance as well. So we're going to be energizing, but we're going to be focusing on the posterior chain, because I had lots of comments after my post about the bridge and the squatting, so they're both going to be in today's class. But people saying, well, how do I access my posterior chain? What do you mean by that? So I thought we'd energize by finding balance in our posterior chain. The title of this class was How to Relieve Tight Hamstrings, which is another big thing, right? So people always say, oh, my hamstrings, they're always tight, I want to stretch them. Most people don't have short, tight hamstrings. They feel tight because they're weak, they're deconditioned. So when a muscle is weak, it presents as tight as well. I know it's hard, it's like, well, how do I know the difference? But if we can condition the hamstrings, that need to stretch them should go away. Okay, I used to have incredibly tight hamstrings. I couldn't sit in a long sit with my legs straight because they were just so painful. But the more I freed up my pelvis, the more I got into my feet, the hamstrings started to work properly, and I don't have that issue anymore. Okay, and I certainly don't need to stretch them. So I think it's worth exploring. As always, do what's right for you. Okay, I don't know your body, so please look after yourself. As I say, I'm going to try and modify. We're trying to do 2 classes in one, so it could all go horribly wrong, but it might work really well. I've never done this before, so I'm going to try and modify for those of you who don't like squats, who don't like standing work. So hopefully grab a chair with a back. You don't need anything else really. I'm going to keep these classes without any equipment, so it's free, it's accessible for everyone. And you need a mat or something comfy, and something for your head if you need head support. And obviously anything else you need, get comfy. So we are going to start on the ground, and then we're going to come up and stand. And as I say, do a little bit of standing work to get us energized. And if it's the start of your day, hopefully that will get you energized for the rest of your day. So let's get going. I'm just going to drop the camera a little bit, guys, so you can see my mat, hopefully. There we go. Right, so we're going to come and lie down. So hopefully you're all happy lying down. I'm not going to use the chair yet. That's going to be for the standing work. So if we can lie down, get yourself comfy. So I mentioned that we're going to be looking at bridges. I'm going to should I do that now? I'm going to talk through the bridge as I do it. Okay, I might talk a bit now. So the bridge, I think, is a fantastic exercise for posterior chain. So what's happening in a bridge? In a bridge, as you go up, the front body has to open and lengthen. The back body is supporting you. So you're basically lying in your back body. So a lot of people kind of brace their abdominals and pull everything in. This should be quite soft and squidgy when you're in a bridge. Yeah, we want this open. This is an opportunity to open the chest, open the diaphragm, lengthen the abdominals. We certainly don't want to be contracting our abdominals in a bridge. Okay, so that's really important. And of course, the other thing we're often told is to squeeze our glutes. Yeah, push up and squeeze your glutes. Now, if we're going to squeeze our glutes, we're actually going to inhibit the hip opening. So a bridge, you're going into hip extension. If I'm squeezing around my pelvis, that natural extension of the front of the body isn't going to be allowed to happen. So you've got a conflict of interest going on there. Okay, so what we want is a natural floating presence of the pelvis. And people, I had a lot of questions after my last post on bridging. So I don't understand how can I do this without squeezing my glutes? And that's what we're hopefully going to go into today. The other thing that might happen, if you're squeezed, I'm just going to do a bad bridge, okay? Don't do this one, but you can watch. This is what I consider a bad bridge is the wrong word, an inappropriate bridge for hypermobility. So if I squeeze my bottom and then I push up, yeah? So I've pushed up, I've actually hinged on my lumbar spine, so it's not very comfortable. But more importantly, I felt an awful amount of pressure around the base of my neck and here, and it was not very nice, because what I did was I pushed with a lot of force through my lumbar spine. My thoracic spine, which most of us are quite tight in anyway because we brace, didn't have a chance to soften and articulate, so all that force went into my neck. Now that is not a good thing, I'm sure you will agree. So we don't want to be pushing, we don't want to go up with too much force, because that force is just going to travel down into your cervical spine. Okay, so the other thing that apart from squeezing the glutes and pushing up, which looks just, I can feel the hypertension here in my back. We're often told to send our knees over our feet. Now, I don't know about you, but when I do that, it really hurts my knees because I'm forcing them, okay? And again, I think that causes a lot of hinging around this area for us. It's not about that. I'm going to explain something, and when we do our bridge, see if you can resonate with this way of thinking about a bridge. It was told to me many, many years ago by a mentor of mine, and it's stuck with me ever since. So I hope it makes sense to you. It certainly made sense to me. We're talking, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. But think of an aeroplane on the runway. Yeah, if we've all been on an aeroplane, or you've all seen an aeroplane taking off, the aeroplane doesn't go up like this, force. It's not a rocket. It doesn't go, okay? The aeroplane goes along the runway, so there's some lengthening that happens first. Then the aeroplane starts to take off, and it goes up like this very gradually, yeah? So it's not boom, it's a long, the spine lengthens, and then it comes up. When you're coming down, if you've been on an aeroplane, as it comes down, hopefully it doesn't just go down like this. It comes into land, and as it hits the ground, it keeps going. So it doesn't just hit the ground and go, boom, I'm done. It's energy, it's still going, we're still lengthening. Okay, so think of this very smooth takeoff and this very smooth landing, okay? So let's get going now. Keep that little analogy in your mind if that works for you. If it doesn't, that's fine too. So let's lie down, get ourselves comfy. Okay, so just take a few breaths as always. Let's settle. Let the breath come. And I really want you, I said at the beginning about lying in our posterior chain. So if you were lying in a big sheath of fascia, as you exhale and soften, can you let your fascia really envelope you? So you're really lying in it. It's wrapping around the back of your body, the back of your shoulders, the soles of your feet. And just feel that. You might be gripping in places, you might be holding on, that's okay. Just recognize that you're doing that and see if you can soften. Can you invite some softness? And then, because this is called energy or energize, we're just going to open up a little bit. So I'm going to do my arm rolls. I'm going to take the arms up and I'm just going to take them behind me. I'm not going to the floor, even if I can, because I want to maintain this lovely length. So I want to feel that my arms are supported from my back. And then I'm going to bring them back down, decelerating. So there's my posterior chain here. The back of the armpit decelerates me against gravity. So I'm going up, working against gravity here. I have to work through it. And then as I come down, I have to decelerate. Otherwise, I'm just going to collapse to the floor with floppy arms. So one more time, we go up. And then feel that you're working on the way down. We're working on the way up and the way down. Good. Now we'll just do a couple of arm circles because they're brilliant for opening up. I haven't got enough room here, so hopefully you've got more room. Up and around. So we're coming up and over. Again, keeping that sense of connection into the back body. And then one more time, up and around. Remember, don't do big ranges, don't do anything that hurts you, work within your own comfort zone. So if we're going to do bridge, let's do a couple of pelvic tilts just to warm ourselves up. And we did these last week, if you were here last week, when we were doing our gentle class. But pelvic tilts are just super nice for freeing up the hip joints, freeing up the lumbar spine. Okay, and then you're just going to let your pelvis settle. So just feel the weight of it. And before we get working, we better warm up our legs a little bit. So I'm just going to float one leg up. Now, is my pelvis still heavy? Have I tilted over? So take a moment and feel the weight through the back of the pelvis and then float it back down. Here's the deceleration. Believe it or not, hamstrings are working to decelerate you on the way down. So if you were doing this in a swimming pool, yeah, you would have the resistance of the water. Or if you were doing this on a reformer or any other piece of equipment or a gym, you would feel the resistance. Now we haven't got anything, so we have to pretend. And your brain doesn't know the difference as to whether you've really got something or not. So you can pretend you can feel the resistance. And we're waking up the posterior chain as we go. Now I am going to show you a little modification here for anyone who doesn't like that. Raise your feet up on some books or on your chair so you can see I've got a much smaller range of motion, so I can still do the exercise. But if I get a painful hips, I've got an impingement or anything like that, I can still do this. Is probably a bit too high, but you can still do it, but you've taken a bit of the load away while you strengthen that lumbar and pelvic stability. Okay, so it's a nice little modification. Okay, now we're going to try some toe taps, because that really does, I think, really energize the body. So you can do single or double. It really depends where you are in your practice. So if we lift one leg up, if I'm doing singles, I'm just going to tap and come back up. So again, decelerate and lengthen. Decelerate and lengthen. When I say lengthen, all of this is lengthening. My posterior chain is lengthening. Now it's contracting, and now it's lengthening. Swap legs. Here we go. Up, and it might feel totally different. I know I do. And down. Pelvis heavy, ribs heavy. Lengthen. Decelerate. I don't want you squeezing. It's not that we're squeezing our hamstrings. Yeah? I just want you to see if you can feel there's a response to the tissue in resisting gravity. Now, those of you who are able to lift both legs up, again, if you're going to do that, this has to stay long if you're able to lift both legs up. I know not everyone is. If that's okay, stick with the singles. But if you're up in both legs, you can do your double toe taps. That's still one leg at a time, but you've got the added load of having one leg in the air. If you're doing this and your back is doing this, then we're not ready to load up with two legs. Okay, this has to be quiet. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with working up by doing singles. Okay, lovely. Now we're all going to hug our knees into our chest and have a little rock. Release our lower back. Well done, that was nice. So hopefully the legs are a little bit awake now. We're going to go into our bridge. So if we like the analogy of the aeroplane, here we go. Everything's soft, we're on the runway, and we're about to take off. So I'm going to exhale, feel my spine release into the ground. And now my tail, the front of my aeroplane, is going to start going along the runway. And as it goes along the runway, it's going to start to lift off. Now, as it lifts off, right now, I'm standing into my feet more, the front and the back of my feet. And my aeroplane is floating up into the sky. Up to you how high you go. Remember, we don't want that horrible feeling across our neck. But you're probably going to feel pressure or weight through the back of the shoulders. That's fine. So I'm in the air. Now, front body is soft. I'm lying in my posterior chain. If you're opening your hips and standing into your feet, you may find your glutes have switched on. And now we're going to come down, so we're coming into land. So we're coming down, and the aeroplane is hitting the runway very softly, I hope, and it's travelling along the mat, and eventually it comes to a stop. Okay, and this is all relaxed now. So here we go. Finding that length. We're thinking that way. So we're going that way. Then the feet have to take over to help lift this up. This is heavy. Pelvises are heavy. Okay, we can't lift it just by pulling it up into the air. We want the pelvis supported through the whole system. So again, weight through the shoulders, never through your neck. And now I'm going to come into land. So I'm coming down, nice smooth landing, softening, rolling along the tarmac. I'm still rolling, I'm still rolling, I'm still rolling, I've stopped. Yes, so it's a beautiful lengthening process, not a up, down, up, down. That really hurts actually. I don't like the pressure those kinds of things puts on individual joints. So let's do one more. Here we go. Settle. Start to feel the spine going this way. The pelvis is already off the floor. We've taken off. The feet are now taking over. The hamstrings and the glutes are switching on. And we can lie in our back body. Now check that this is soft. Let your tissue lie on your back body. Feel the chest open. And then let's come down for a nice smooth landing. Softening the chest. Softening the ribs. Here comes the back of the waist. Here comes the pelvis. And we stop. Lovely. Feels really good. So a little bit of a windscreen wiper, just to loosen anything off that might have been working. Always nice to loosen things off. Okay, now we're going to slowly come up, so take your time, because we've been going up into a bridge. I hope that was nice bridging for you. We are going to come up very slowly, so just take your time. We're going to come up to stand, okay? But I am going to bring my chair in case you don't like standing work. Okay, so hopefully I'm going to have to move my sorry guys, I'm going to have to move my camera back, otherwise you're not going to see me. You still can't see me. This is the trouble with live classes, doing it on your own, right? You got no cameraman. Can you see? Yes. Okay, so I've got my chair. We are going to do some standing work. We're going to start with a few squats. So we have just done a bit of hip opening. We've lengthened out through our bridges. So, squatting. Again, this was in my first video about the posterior chain. So as I go down, and we're hinging at the hip, okay, I don't want to collapse. So because of gravity, I could just fold and collapse. And a lot of people find themselves down here because they've collapsed, okay? We want to decelerate. So feet opening up into the ground, hinging backwards at the hips. So now I'm sitting in my posterior chain. It has stretched. My posterior chain has stretched. My quads are working, they've contracted. Now, when does the posterior chain kick in? It kicks in now. So I'm standing into my feet, and if I stand into my feet, the hamstrings and glutes are going to kick in, and we're going to control that hip extension so we don't hinge forward. So we go down, and we come up. So slow. Yeah, try not to let your knees come over your feet, because that's going to hurt. Think about sending the hips back, even if you're doing this. Again, we can hold on to a chair if I don't like to be unsupported, okay? So I can still do this, okay? And if I can't stand at all, if I don't like any pressure on my knees, what we were looking at is a hip hinge. So I can still hinge forward, okay? So I've got a long spine, stand into my feet to come back. So this is a seated squat. So we're going to hinge, not collapse. We're going to hinge, find your feet, and the feet bring you back. So I'm hinging, and I'm coming back. Okay, legs are wide. One more time, hinge, find your feet, come back. Okay, nice. So, squats. Now another way to wake up those posterior muscles is any kind of hip extension exercise if you want to get your glutes and hamstrings working. So you can hold on. If you don't want to hold on, I'll show you how to do it standing up. So if you're going to hold on, make sure we're not collapsing like this. So we're lifted, got a bit of upper body stability going on, and I'm going to slide my leg out. Again, it doesn't have to be big, but I'm trying to lift from under the crease, my gluteal fold. So I'm not doing this. I'm not doing lumbar extension, that hurts, okay? I'm doing a small, pelvis doesn't really move. Make sure your chair doesn't fall over like mine just did, okay? I'm going to do that on my own, without a chair. Same thing, swap sides. I'm going to do a little, it's coming from here. Of course, we're going to try and lock that knee, because we love locking our knees. So can you keep your standing leg soft as you do your hip extension? Okay, give your legs a little shake. The other one I really like is taking the leg out to the side. So same thing, you can hold on. So instead of going backwards, we're going to go on a diagonal. Again, try and work from this glute. Try not to lock. Keep that energy going down and take that leg out to the side. Now that is going to go right into that glute. See if you can feel that. Doesn't have to be big, you might be here. Okay. Again, you can do that other side without holding on. Okay. I'm doing about 5. But great for our balance. Working on our balance, working on this pelvic stability. Again, if you didn't like any of that, we can, this one's a little bit more awkward because you have to sit right at the end of your chair, but you can still do your side to side by taking the leg out to the side, okay? So you're still getting movement and action around the hip joint. Okay, it's a little bit more awkward, honestly it is, but at least you can do something if you don't like the standing work. Now, I'll stay on the chair. You might want to lean back a little bit if you make sure you've got a back on your chair. Let's practice our balance. So I'm going to lift one leg up and put it back down. So we already did this lying down, didn't we? We did our lifting. Now again, I might not be able to lift my leg that much. I might be doing this. And that's fine. Okay, lift and resist. So we don't lift and drop. We lift and resist. Okay, so that's our seated version. Our standing version, with or without the chair. Stand into that leg and we lift and resist. Same leg. Lift and resist. So again, lift. This is stretched. Resist. This is contracted. Lift, contract, lift, contract. I'm not squeezing my bottom. It's just happening. So don't try and squeeze it. I can hold on, of course, if I need to. So here we go. Lift and resist. So that deceleration, or I guess you could call it your eccentric muscle control, which we hate, because we like to fall into gravity, or I'm a bit wobbly on this side. Very, very important, yes? Good. So eccentric muscle control, deceleration, whatever we want to call it, it's very good for getting these guys to work. Now, again, with or without your chair, a few little walks on the spot. So, you can't really see my feet, but I'm going to be walking on the spot. Okay, so what I'm not doing is this. So you might see this a lot because I haven't got hip joint control. So I'm allowing myself to collapse into my hip and lock my knee. Okay, we don't want that. This guy is going to be floating, a bit like the bridge. So I'm going to press through the bent leg to come up and decelerate on the way down. So when I press through the bent leg, through the balls of the feet, that's going to fire up the posterior, and then it's going to lengthen. So if you just look at my left leg, okay, so here we go, bent leg, press is posterior, down is length, yeah, up and bend, press and lengthen. So now press and lengthen. So then you get this bounce, yeah, so I'm going straight up, yeah, we don't want to go forward and up, we're not doing this, but hold on to a chair. I like to hold on to a chair because it helps us not travel forward, okay? Very good for our pots, good getting that calf pump working. And again, if we don't like any of that, we can do it seated. So I'm literally just lifting my heels, have your arms out in front of you, make it a little bit more challenging. So we don't want to be sort of slouching back here, trying to sit up, and we're walking on the spot. Okay? Lovely. Okay. I think we should finish with a little ankle circle after that, just to stretch that out. And we're going to add in a bit of rotation and a bit of side bending, either seated or, what's the word, standing. Okay, so I'll start on the chair. Nice and balanced through the pelvis, okay, pelvis heavy. Just a little bit of side bend, lovely to energize, get us ready for the day. So we're going to float one arm up. You can either leave your hand here or it can slide down the leg of your chair. Now, oftentimes we start to rotate and collapse when we do these. Can you lift your heart space, and find space and length, and then come back. Same side. I'm not crashing into it, yeah? So again, I'm trying to decelerate as I lengthen. This is more side body, okay? It's not really going to feel a lot of posterior. Other side. So if you're standing, equal weight in both feet, sliding your hand down the side of your leg. Okay, one more. Good. And a little bit of rotation. So the chair's good if you've got a chair because you've got something you can hold on to. If not, fold your arms and focus on the spinal rotation. So spinal rotations are lovely because they really send that energy up the spine. Talking of energy and all this standing work, the more work we get in our legs, the heavier, the more active our legs are, the more weight we have through our legs. It releases the spine, it allows the spine to lengthen and elongate. Okay, or when you're sitting, you know, we often end up sort of collapsing down like this, don't we? And we're at our desks or driving like this. We want to find that weight going down to allow the spine to lengthen up. Yeah, so it's going to make you feel more energized. Yeah, this, if you sit like this, you can feel your energy levels going down. You know, I feel closed. But if I find weight down through my feet and pelvis, I feel my heart lift, I feel more open, I feel more energized. So posture can change how we feel, yeah? So let's do our rotations however we're doing it. Remember, don't jam into it, so it doesn't matter if you can't go a long way, so I'm only going to there. What I don't want to do is laterally shift, so I might end up over here. So that's, now I've got too much weight on one hip, so I've got to bring myself back and try and stay balanced on both hips, okay? And then the other side. This is my tighter side, so you'll see I can't go as far. I'm just going to breathe. Okay, so same thing standing up. If you're standing up, make sure you're not laterally shifting, you're not translating your weight over to one foot. So try and keep it nice and balanced and just breathe. And think about opening up the heart. And then one more. Good. And then standing or sitting, we're going to float those arms up like we did when we were lying down. Again, if you need them slightly bent, that's absolutely fine. And then widen your chest. So open the space, open the skin of your chest and feel that lovely awakening here. So up and open. So I'm not dropping. Again, here we go, posterior muscles. I could just do this. And yeah, I've got great range. Wow, great range. Haven't got any control. Just throwing my arms about. So if I come up, I want to decelerate. You could very, very gently think of pressing the little finger side of your hand down as long as you're gentle. So the little finger side of your hand will connect you to your posterior muscles. This guy comes all the way up into here. So if you really can't feel it, focus on your little finger side and see if that helps you find the muscles in your upper back. So, you know, we really do have this sling of muscles and fascia that is there to hold us up if we know how to access it. Now, I'm going to do one final exercise, which is a forward roll, a forward bend. So if you're feeling potsy today, please, you know, maybe avoid this, or we'll do it seated as well. If you've got anything like osteoporosis or any contraindications for full flexion, please don't do this one. Okay, so the reason I'm doing it is because it's a great way, again, of activating those posterior muscles. So I'm going to do different versions. Again, please look after yourselves. If it's not suitable, please don't do this one. So I'm going to do an unsupported. Of course, talking of support, you can do these against the wall as well. So your pelvis is fully supported. So this is the unsupported freestanding version. So feet wherever you need them to be. Opening the feet into the ground. Okay, not locking back. Try and keep this soft. Pelvis is floating. Give it a little wiggle. Okay. So again, this is a big deceleration against gravity, right? Otherwise, I'm just going to do this. And I can get my hands to the floor and I can hang out. I'm definitely feeling a stretch. Is it doing any good? I'm not really working anything. So we don't want to do that. Yeah, it's too fast, too much force. So we're going to decelerate. We're going to roll ourselves down, decelerating as we go. So here we go. Don't worry, I'm going to show you the other versions in a minute. So take a breath, soft knees. Say that to remind myself because I love to lock those knees. So soft knees, little nod of the head. And then we're going to round over the heart. So now what's happening to the posterior chain? Shout out. It's lengthening, yes? Can you feel how you're having to pay out through your whole posterior chain to the crown of your head? If you need to bend your knees, go ahead, bend your knees. Guess who's going to get you back up? Guess who's in charge? The posterior chain. So the feet are going to open up. Now really open them up, expand them. And as you stand into your feet, those hamstrings, that's their job now, to get that pelvis around. These guys, don't let them give up. They're pulling the pelvis back. And then we stand and we don't collapse at the end. Okay, so that's one version. Keep going with that if you're happy with that. If I don't like going all the way down, I'm going to get my chair and I'm just going to come to here. I'm not going to collapse into my chair. I'm lifting away from my chair. I can even bend my knees. Okay, same thing. How am I going to get up? I'm going to stand into my feet and the feet are going to open up and that's going to help my hamstrings switch on and I can roll up. And if I don't like that, I can do it seated and I'm going to nod my head and I'm going to roll down. Again, I'm not collapsing. I could go all the way to the floor and collapse, but I'm not. I'm decelerating, decelerating. My back line is paying out. How do I get back? I stand into my feet. That tells my legs, it tells my pelvis, it tells my spine to come up. The feet are so important for communication, telling everyone else what's going on. Down we go. So if you haven't watched my foot live class, please go and watch it.
There's lots of fun foot exercises in there.
And back we come. Lovely. So take a moment, because we've been upside down. Let the blood just settle again. And then we just roll those shoulders out a couple of times. So 3 variations of our roll down, or our forward roll. Hopefully one of those was working for you. So just roll those shoulders out. Lovely. Just see how that feels. Good. And then we're just going to sit. So although we're talking energy or energize, let's just sit in our own energy. So movement is energy, right? So we've just moved. Hopefully we've generated some energy here. So can I sit now or stand wherever I am? I talk about quiet standing or quiet sitting. Eyes closed. Remember what I said, the heavier the legs feel from the waist down into the ground or into the chair, the more energy is going to be released up into your spine. So we don't have to force ourselves and fix our postures and try and be upright. The spine is going to organically lengthen. No pushing, no holding on by the diaphragm. Just let it be. Soften the skin and be here in your body. And just noticing it. Not judging it, just noticing it. Lovely. Fantastic. When you want to open your eyes, let's do it with a very soft gaze. So really think about looking from the back of your eyes. Try not to look from the front of your eyes. Yeah? Think about the eyes being bigger. Can you have your eyes bigger so we take in more? Lovely. Amazing. That was so nice. I feel energized. I hope you do. I hope you do too. Any questions you want to put in the chat box? Is it a chat box? In the comment box before we finish? Hope you enjoyed that. I thought I did. It was nice. I hope it made some sense about the posterior chain and how they have to pay out and then they have to contract. Okay, muscles are doing different things at different times depending on what you're doing. And that's why I don't talk about holding in your pelvic floor or holding in your tummy muscles, because they're supposed to be lengthening and contracting depending on the activity that you're doing. And so that whole holding something in place, can you say more about standing into your feet? Is it pressing into the tripod? Yes. So the foot, if you watch the foot video, I talk about the tripod. What else have we got? Walking exercise was so interesting. Thank you. Love the seated options on the squats. Yeah, I just came up, I thought about that this afternoon. I was thinking, how can we do a seated squat? And actually, a squat is basically a hip hinge, isn't it? So I thought, well, if we can keep the spine long and just hinge forward, we're pretty much doing a squat. So make squats a lot more accessible for us if we don't like standing work, or squats hurt, and they do hurt some people. So yeah, the tripod. So your foot will always find a tripod. The ideal tripod is heel bone, big toe pad, little toe pad. Okay, that would be a perfect foot. If you can't find that tripod, your foot will find another tripod. So you might be slightly on the outer edges of your feet. If you're overpronated, like many of us, with internally rotated bones, you've probably got more pressure on the inside of your feet. So yeah, watch the foot video and try and think about finding your tripod when you're standing. So it's literally heel, big toe pad, little toe pad. The toes should not be weight bearing. So a lot of us grip. I know I used to. My toes would grip. It's because I was using my front body to stabilize me. I had no weight in my heels, so I was literally feeling like I was going to fall forward all the time. So my toes were the last resort, and they were gripping on for dear life, hoping to stabilize the rest of me, which obviously isn't very efficient and not very helpful when it comes to walking, etc. So my glutes were non-existent. because I wasn't putting any weight in my heels. When we open the foot, are we widening the toes? Okay, let's do this. Everyone put their hand in a fist. I know this opening of the foot is a weird concept, and I don't want anyone to go home and start trying to stretch their foot. So everyone put their hand in a fist. Okay, so if this was the sole of your foot, okay, if I asked you to open your hand, okay, don't do this because I don't want anyone hurting themselves, but you could just go like that and you could really stretch it and you can see all the tendons and stuff and it's not very nice. I want you to open your foot like this. I talked about this a while ago, or maybe I talked in the Zebra Club about this one evening. It's more of an expansion. So remember, we've got to treat our body with respect and we've got to treat it gently. So I'm going to open my palm of my hand, thinking of opening from the sole, if this was the sole of my foot. So I'm going to start opening the sole of my foot, but I'm expanding it. So it's going in multiple directions. So it's getting wider and it's getting longer and maybe it's opening up on the diagonal, but it's doing that. Yeah, it's expanding. I'm not doing that, which is quite fixed and violent, yeah? A flower opening, yes, beautiful, Heather. So it's like a flower, exactly. A flower doesn't just go, it gradually opens up, yeah? And it does this. Your feet, and I know it's hard because most of us, I won't say all of us, but many of us have these rolled in, over-pronated or flat feet. I'm not calling them over-pronated actually because they're probably not pronated, they're just rolling in, okay? And now I've lost my train of thought. Yes, when we've got these very flat, rolled in feet, it's hard to think about the foot opening up. But what you want to try and do is if you do nothing else, try and get the weight onto the outer edge of the heel. Because, let me show you, if you do that and you've got these internally rotated knees like I do, if I don't do anything, I'll be like that, because my knees are valgus, yeah? They'll just roll in, internally rotated femurs, and then my feet roll in, okay? And I'm sure many of us can relate to that, yeah? And I'm locking, of course, which doesn't help. So if I think about finding the outer edge, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to open my foot by putting a little bit of this expansion pressure into it, and I'm going to try and find the outer edges of my heel. That's all I'm doing. Now look what happens to my femurs as they spiral out. And now I've got weight in my heel and the big toe pad. So I'm better, I'm more in my tripod. If I don't think about my tripod, can you see how I just roll in? So I'm spiraling, and that spirals these, and it makes my glutes switch on as well. So I've got support for my pelvis and my lower back, okay? But what I'm not doing is just jamming out into my feet. Okay, all of this stuff is very subtle because the body is very intelligent, and we have to treat it with subtlety. We can't just force our will on it and say, well, I want to do this, so we're going to do this. Yeah, that's probably going to backfire. So you have to say, well, how do you feel about having a bit more weight on the outer edge of your heel? How does that feel? Does that feel comfortable? And your body will say yes, or it might say no. So you're not going to do it for 10 hours a day. You're going to go, okay, I'm just going to stand here for a few minutes and breathe and see if I can practice expanding my feet. I tell you what, a nice way of doing it, I haven't got it here, but I've got these big foam pads, a bit like yoga blocks, but they're a bit squidgy. Or if you've got a very soft mat, that's really nice because you've got the texture of kind of sinking, and then that you have to respond by opening up. So I often get my clients to stand on these big foam pads. It's good for balance as well, but it's really nice for them to get into their feet. Sit fits, if you've got a sit fit, that's obviously a little bit wobblier, so that's a little bit more challenging. But stimulating the feet in any way you can is going to help. Lovely. So yeah, opening up through expansion, not force. Yeah, you shouldn't see tendons and bones popping up when you try and open your feet. It should be very subtle, and it certainly shouldn't hurt. Wobbly is bad. wobbly, is that what wobbly equals very bad? How do you mean? I don't know what you mean by that. So feet, yeah, what I wanted to say, I lost my train of thought, is that your feet are never static on the ground. So even though we think we're standing still, your feet are doing this all the time. They're adjusting. Every time you breathe, your body weight's going to change. It's going to go forward and back very subtly. Inhale's going to bring weight slightly forward. Exhale's going to bring your weight slightly back. So your feet cannot be fixed and rigid in a certain place because they need to be doing this all the time. Yeah? A bit like animals. Yeah? They're always sensing out the ground with their paws. Yeah? And we need to be kind of the same. Good. Lovely. Great. So thank you. Thank you for those questions. Really nice, really interesting. I hope that was helpful. So yes, go and, wobble boards. Okay. Yes, so I don't use wobble boards because I do find those a bit too aggressive. The foam pads are just like standing on a yoga mat. So actually they're okay. It depends, obviously everyone's individual. If somebody's got subluxing ankles or dislocated ankles, you're not going to jump them straight into an unstable situation, of course not. So it really depends who you're working with. But yes, wobble boards I'm not a huge fan of. I think they're quite aggressive. So yeah, I much prefer a softer option to using a hard wooden or metal wobble board. But you know, standing on a yoga mat, just feeling the sensations through the feet. Not a yoga mat because they're a bit thin, a Pilates mat or a thicker mat is really nice. But yeah, as with all of this stuff, it really comes down to the individual and who you are, how your body is, where you are in your journey. So yeah, everything has to be obviously adapted to that individual person. Lovely. So thank you for joining me. So we're here next week. 5 o'clock on Thursday. I think it's fatigue, actually. Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming. It's fatigue next week. So, yeah, going from Energise, we're going down to dealing with fatigue, how we might deal with fatigue, chronic fatigue, those days when we're just feeling a little bit low energy. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Lovely. Thank you for all your comments, guys. So, yes, come join me next Thursday at 5 o'clock for week 3 of EDS HSD Awareness Month, where we will be exploring fatigue as well. So yeah, a gentle class, but something we can do in bed maybe on those days when we're just not feeling it, but want to move it out because movement is good. Lovely. So have a great day wherever you are. I really appreciate you coming, guys. It means a lot to me and I love sharing with you. So have a good evening if you're in Europe or the UK. Have a good day if you're in the States. And I will see you on Thursday. Lovely to see you all. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Thank you.